I met a South Asian man who was, I think, probably having some doubts about just religion. And many people are. And we have to have compassion for these people, because when you look at the world as it is, it's very difficult to see. We're in the Khandaq. And there's a lot of people that can't see the palaces of Syria and the palaces of Persia. They just stuck in the Khandaq. The Prophet ﷺ, the Qur'an mentions only 4 chapters have ethnic components in the Qur'an. Chapter 17 is called the chapter of Bani Israel. And this is a very important human community. The influence that they have is extraordinary. And all of the horrors that we've been witnessing in Palestine being done to these poor people that really have no army, they have no air force, they have no defense, they're being bombed relentlessly, humanitarian aid being withheld. I mean, these fanatics going and even destroying food and things that were supposed to go to these people. It's beyond belief to see this. And I know it's so painful for people. The Jewish community historically is a community that has held to a book, the Torah. And when they broke from that Torah, many, many problems came with that break. And then attempt to restore that Torah brought all of these heresies into their own teaching, like the heresies of Rabbi Kook, as opposed to the more orthodox position of Rabbi Teitelbaum, who still these Orthodox Jews follow. But the Jewish community is a community that has immense education, and when you look at their positions in this country, if you look at the Nobel Prize, the contributions, all these things, this is something that the Muslims had and we lost. This is something we had and we lost. And so we cannot fault people. We can definitely fault what's happening, and we should, and condemn it, what's happening to these people. But we cannot fault people for being in the positions that they have acquired through incredible effort and work, when we haven't done the same. We have to rise up as a community, because we have the talent, we have the intelligence, especially in these United States. I mean, this community is an amazing community. But Bani Israel is right there in the Qur'an. And you look at how many verses deal with the Jews. Never an unqualified statement. Minhum al-mu'minun, amongst them are believers. Wa aktharuhum al-fasiqun, sounds like a lot of communities. Minhum man ta'man huwa dinaran yuaddihi ilayk. Some of them you trust them with a lot of money, they're trustworthy. Other ones, even if it's a small amount, you have to keep on them. Right? Laysu sawa, they're not the same, all of them. This is the Qur'an distinguishes, it doesn't collectivize. It always distinguishes. And that's why it's very important that the Muslim community recognize that. The Qur'an, the only time the Qur'an doesn't distinguish is with believers. And now Muslims, too many of us make all the kuffar one thing, but the Muslims, he's this, he's that, right? So that's a problem in our community. But Bani Israel, the second one, chapter 30, Rome, the Europeans. I mean, isn't it interesting that the two most powerful elements in our modern world have chapters named after them? There's no chapter called Faris. Even though Persia was the most powerful empire at that time, it was more powerful than the Byzantines. But the Prophet said, Al-Furs la akhsha alaykum. The Persians, he wasn't worried about. He knew people like Ali Attai would come out of those people. great defenders of this religion, great intellects. That's what he knew. Look at the Persians. He's amazing people. The Persians, Allahu Akbar. Look at them. Tirmidhi, Sibawi, Ghazali, Maulana Rumi, Saadi, Hafiz, Shabastari. You just go on and on and on. Amazing people. He knew that, he said, Satakun lahum natha. They'll have one butt, Qadisiyah. And then he said, Thumma la Faris. And then there's no, he didn't mean there's no more Persia. He meant there's no more fear of them. It's a great civilization that gave the world so much. But he wasn't worried about them. But he said, Rome, that al-Qurun, the Europeans. And it is the Europeans, my friends. When you see a Rome in any hadith, and in that chapter of the Qur'an, this is not the Byzantines, it's not the Greeks, it's the Europeans. And their sacred history all goes back to Rome. Read the Venerable Bede. The sacred history goes back to Rome. Rome, that al-Qurun, they will be multi-generational. كُلُّ مَا هَلَكَ قَرْنٌ بَرَزَ قَرْنٌ آخَرٌ. Every time you see one of them, their generation destroyed, another one rises up. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said. How did he know that in the 7th century? How did he know that? How did he know Persia would end? He didn't see that in his lifetime. How did he know that Rome wouldn't end? And then he said, Ashabu sakhrin wa bahrin. They will possess the land and the sea. And now the air. Bahar is one of the words for the air also. Ashabu bahrin wa sakhrin. Hayhata, hayhata. In other words, don't think you're going to ever conquer them. Hayhata, hayhata. Wa innama harakatu ma'as. Their end comes with the hour. So we have to learn to live with these people. We need to teach them who we are. Encourage them. They're getting better. They're getting better. You know, they haven't dropped an atom bomb in over 70 years. Yeah. So we don't want atom bombs. We should be concerned about this. You know, one of these guys the other day said, maybe we're facing a nuclear war. It's not a joke. Annie Jacobson, read her book. And Surah Dukhan, فَارْتَقِبْ يَوْمَ تَأْتِيَ السَّمَاءُ بِدُخَانٍ مُبِينٍ. Fear a day when the skies will bring a clear smoke, a manifest smoke. يَغْشَى النَّاسِ, it will overwhelm people. هَذَا عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ, this is a manifest punishment. رَبَّنَا اكْشِفْ عَنَّا الْعَذَابِ. The believers say, remove this adhab. Inna mu'minun, we're believers. Nuclear winter. The earth is covered in smoke. I don't know, maybe that's one of the meanings. Maybe that's where it's all headed. Because we know Iblis wins in the dunya. He loses in the akhirah. But he wins here. The Prophet said the end of time won't come until nobody says Allah, Allah. So Dawkins, yeah, you can rejoice here now. Right? But if you think a world with religion is bad, just wait till a world without religion. So that's something to think about. That the Prophet ﷺ, how did the Qur'an know that? And then the other two are Quraysh and the Ahzab, the Arabs. And the Arabs, بُغْضَ الْعَرَبْ مِنَ النِّفَاقِ وَحُبُّهُمْ مِنَ الْإِيمَانِ. You hear so many people speaking ill of the Arabs. The Arabs are the Prophet's people. And we should want good for them and pray for them. There's a lot of tragic things happening in the Arab world. There have been many mistakes. The leadership has been terrible. The leadership has been bad for a long time. The Sheikh Shadiri Naifar, a great Tunisian scholar that I knew and was one of my teachers, and actually he gave me years ago ijazah with the Hamza. I think Kashf from him or something that I would translate it because he gave me his commentary on it. So he told me that the Tunisians haven't been practicing Islam for 800 years. That's what he said. He was the dean of the Zaytuna College. Amazing man. Bint Shelby, this amazing woman who stood and wouldn't shake the hand of Bourguiba on national television, humiliated him. Amazing woman, this Tunisian scholar. I sat with her and she told me about her father. He was 90 years old. He's a great Hanafi scholar. He was a Tunisian Hanafi because the Hanafis, when the Ottomans were there, some of the Tunisians were actually Hanafi because a lot of the court system was using still Hanafi. So these are the things our Prophet ﷺ saw. But here is what I want to end with, because I think, and this was from Marmaduke Pickthall. He said something amazing. He said of all the qualities that he saw about the Prophet, the one that really struck him most was his gratitude. And this is a man who really went deep into our religion. And I just thought that was such a beautiful acknowledgement. Anas, who served him, his little boy, his mother brought him, she said, I want him to serve you. Anas became a great muhaddith. But Anas said, he served me more than I served him. He said, he never once said to me, oof. Once he went in and he saw Anas, he said, Anas, go do this. And Anas looked at him, he said, la. And the Prophet smiled and left the room. He came back a little while later and he said, Anas, you didn't go yet? And I said, I'm going right now, Ya Rasulullah. This is called pattern disruption. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said this, he forgave the women who prepared for him a poisoned meal, giving him thereby a painful illness, which eventually caused his death according to some narrations. But he used to get headaches from the poison. He forgave the ghoulish and ferocious Hind, who became a great woman. The wife of Abu Sufyan, who she bit into the liver of his uncle Hamza, and he sat with her. He sat with her. He gave her fatwa about her husband. He forgave men and women who had maligned or betrayed him. Only for the welfare of the Muslim commonwealth was he severe in punishment. Never on his personal account. Muhammad was full of virtues. But what has charmed me most among the virtues of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was his gratitude. A very rare ingredient in the constitution of a great man. So here's what he said. When the Prophet ﷺ came into Mecca, and imagine this, these Meccans had fought him. This is 20 years they fought him. He comes into Mecca with his head bowed down. That's not the way conquerors come into places they've just conquered. He came in with his head bowed down because he knew he was not the Qahir. He knew who Al-Qahir was. He was Abd al-Qahir. He was the servant of the conqueror. طَأْطَأَ رَأْسُهُ. He braided his hair because he had so many Bedouin and the Bedouin braided their hair. It's not his sunnah to braid the hair. It's the sunnah of the Bedou. But he braided it in solidarity with them to show them Sidi Abdullah Hajj Ibrahim says, رُبَّ يَفْعَلُ لِلْمَكْرُوهِ مُبَيِّنًا أَنَّهُ لِلْتَنْزِيهِ. Sometimes he will do something that's makruh in order to show that it's not haram. So for him it would be like normally it would be makruh for people who it's not their culture for the men to braid. But if it's their culture, like in the African American community, that's part of their culture. So if they become Muslim and they wear braids, that's the urf of those people. But if it's not your culture, if it's in your culture, it's the women who braid. And this is why Islam recognizes urf. But he came in with a black turban that he called Sahab, the cloud. It was his turban for jihad. Usually he wore a white turban, but when he went on jihad, he wore the cloud. So what happens, he goes, and Hunayn is an amazing battle when أَعْجَبَتْكُمْ كَثْرَتْكُمْ. They were all impressed, they thought. And they all fled. They were fleeing. Abu Sufyan was holding, because Abu Sufyan now, he was there with the Prophet holding his mule.